Hey, I'm Jeff and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to show you some updates with my plants on planks. I do have a lot of them. Some of them are doing very well and others not so much. Plus I also recently extended a plank, so I'm going to show you how I did that. So let's check it out. This first one is without a doubt my favorite plants on a plank. This is the Marble Queen Pothos, and here is the largest leaf. And these next two, for some reason, they didn't size up quite as large as the one below it here, but it is getting a new leaf. It's just starting to size up right now. I think one of the issues with leaf size was I was letting the soil get pretty dry, so I've been trying to water it much more than I would normally would. You can see there's a ton of roots in this pot, so I'm guessing that it had something to do with water and nutrient uptake. I also started using some more fertilizer. Do have a tape measure on standby just to show you the size of the leaves. So this one's about 5 inches on the lower ones. As the plant has grown, the leaves are now about 9 inches in length and about 5 in width. Just wanted to show the lower stem here as well. As the plant grows, or it's grown up the plank, the stem has also thickened up quite a bit as well. So this is pretty spectacular, and I'm going to show you all these little aerial roots on the back. They look like little feet, and they just anchor themselves onto the wood. You see they're all gripping onto the wood. You got some larger ones here as well, right to the top. The next one I'm going to show down here is my Rhaphidophora decursiva, and just so you can see, the stem is now growing off the plank. This one has definitely attached to the plank, and I've only added the support tie at the bottom. You can see it's kind of pushed out this bit of a runner section without any leaves. It has finally put out a new leaf. At the very top here, this thing is super glossy, super shiny. Jake the Plant Guy on Instagram has a beautiful decursiva as well, and the difference between his and mine is his is on a moss pole, mine's on a plank. His is doing way better than mine, and I'm kind of disappointed that it sent out this little runner, but I'm happy to see that it is finally pushing out some new growth. So I don't know if it was just kind of establishing itself on the plank, but it's kind of going off course right now. So yeah, I don't know quite what I'm going to do with this one yet, but I think I might try the air layering process. So I'm going to put like a little portion of moss around the root system or the aerial roots, and then hopefully it develops a root system. I can hack it off and then I'll put it on a moss pole, hoping to get larger, more mature leaves, but I'm really happy with this one. I just placed this one on my little stool so we can check out the top a little bit better here. This is my golden pothos. It is 3 stems. They've all lost the lower leaves, but you can see, same thing, as it's growing up the plank, the stem is sizing up, and all those little aerial root feet are grabbing onto the plank. But I want to show you something really cool. I'm going to spin this around. The plant itself started, I don't want this to tip over, the seat's a little bit unsteady. You can see all those aerial roots on the plank, and all of a sudden, it started to wrap around to the back side, which I think is super neat. And then it put out this beautiful leaf on the back of the plank. These plants on planks are receiving light from my Soltech Aspect grow light, as well as a grow bulb right here. I did add a little string, and I just clip it underneath the grow light here, just on the edge, just to provide more of a directional focus for the light, I guess. This one was getting a little bit kind of bleached out, so I didn't want this light just kind of beaming down on the top. So a lot of the plants right here are receiving that angled light, so the plants on planks get a little bit more of the peripheral light source, which they absolutely love. I do have a discount code for any Soltech product. If you use that code, you get 10% off, and I do get a small little commission off of that as well. So if you want to go check out any Soltech products, go check out their website, or I'll leave the link down in the description of this video. Now moving on to this golden Hawaiian pothos. Same thing, it's on a plank, just picking it up. It's staying in the pot. Look at how much variegation is on the newest leaf. This one is still sizing up and hardening off. It's still pretty soft. And these ones are beautiful. You can see all the little aerial feet on the back of this one as well. That's probably the coolest thing about these plants on planks, is how they attach themselves to the plank. So I did use a little bit of packing tape there just to help train it to latch onto the plank. This one I just absolutely love, and I can't wait until I get large leaves on this one. So you can see the leaves have sized up quite fast, with each new leaf. And when you have a plant like this, a climbing plant, you'll obviously see that you'll have almost like a shingling pattern. So there's a new leaf on each side, and then it just kind of climbs its way up, whatever it's grabbing onto. These actually came from one of my kids' beds. I had an extra set of the planks that attach to the base, like the frame of the bed where the mattress sits on. So I just had an extra set in the garage, and I've been using them for these plants on planks. If you're worried about wood rotting, like because I put mine in the pot, if you're worried about wood rotting, which I have not had any issues with, then I would recommend using cedar. And I have a couple back here. There's a couple cedar planks. These are much more rot resistant than, this is a softwood that's very pliable. So over time, this will eventually rot. I've never had any issues with rot yet, and definitely this plant will outgrow the plank before the plank rots in the soil. This is my favorite syngonium, and it's been struggling a little bit. And again, I think it's coming down to a watering issue. The soil's pretty dry, and I just gave it water the other day. But if you want a fairly easy to care for syngonium, I highly recommend this one. And it doesn't even look like a syngonium. Syngoniums have very characteristic, almost like pointy lobes, whereas this one looks very similar to what a philodendron leaf would look like. But I absolutely love this one. This also has attached fairly nicely to the plank as well. You can see it's got some thicker aerial roots, and this one is just kind of doing its own thing. But just notice one thing that's a little bit different for the aerial roots compared to a pothos. All the pothos aerial roots were on the back side of the stem, and they were like all attaching to the plank. They had some larger ones as well as those smaller caterpillar feet. This one has kind of small, like they're thick aerial roots, but the ones on the back are attached to the plank, but it does have some in the front as well, almost like a monstera aerial root. So I wonder if this just helps with like capturing moisture from the ambient air. I'm not too sure, but yeah, I didn't realize it has these, or I didn't notice it has these aerial roots kind of all around the stem. So I'm not too sure what the ones on the front are for. I'll have to do a little bit of research, but I do have a smaller little cutting in the pot here as well. It's got two new little leaves. Hopefully this one attaches to the plank as well. I do have another chia pens right down here, which I'll show you. It's currently in leca and water. So this is it right here. It's tucked in behind a few other plants. See if I can make some room here. This one I did have upstairs. It's on a cedar plank. I did have it propagating in a container of water. I just kind of left it in there. I didn't really know what I was going to do with it, and I just decided to leave it in the water. And just recently I added some leca in there as well. Seems to like it. It has pushed out two new leaves, so I think I'm just going to leave it in this leca water mixture for a while just to see how it does. And you can see the aerial roots are latching onto the wood as well, and they look more white. They're not as kind of that hard, crusty aerial roots. These ones are a little bit more pliable. I'm wondering if that is due to the growing medium, the water and the leca. So I'm not too sure, but I'll have to just kind of experiment with this and see where it goes. This little guy way back here is my Philodendron Majestic. I actually won this cutting off of an Instagram contest. It's finally putting out a couple newer leaves. Here's the newest one right here, and it's got a smaller one just at the back side here. So absolutely gorgeous plant. I can't wait till this one sizes up. It's not really taking to the wood plank as much as I'd like it to. I may have to move this one to a moss pole, very similar to this. I have these D-shaped moss poles. Yeah, the roots are just growing in here like crazy. So, okay, I'm getting off topic. I'm moving away from the planks to the moss poles, but yeah, I just had to show this beautiful new leaf on the Philodendron Majestic. In this little corner of the back of my plant table, I do have a small little Rhaphidophora tetrasperma that I'm training to grow on a wood plank here as well. There are two, I don't know if I can get in there, there are two cuttings on there, and they're just very small little juvenile leaves, but I'm trying to get this one to grow up the plank here as well, and hopefully filling in this area, and I want it to go right to the roof. The next one I'm going to show here is my Epiprenum pinnatum Cebu or Cebu Blue. You can see the leaves are fairly small at the bottom, but as it grows up the plank, they are sizing up quite dramatically. Here is one of the newest ones, and this is the plant that I had to extend the wood plank. So you can see it goes way up to the top now. And what I did is I actually had a second plank, and because they are bed slats or bed frame slats, they have little pre-drilled holes in the top or the ends of the planks. And all I did is I overlapped the planks just at the back. So I added a screw at the bottom of the plank and then one here at the top. So they are secured together, and then I use the plant wire or plant tie to attach the top of the cutting to the plank. But overall, it's pretty stable. I thought for sure it would be really top heavy and kind of flop over, but it hasn't. It remains upright. It's in a larger pot, so yeah, if you had it in a small pot, maybe, I don't know. But overall, I'm really happy. It's not going to tip over or anything like that. Same with the other ones. They're tipsy, but I'm not worried about it just like falling over one day. So overall, I'm really happy, and I hope I can get like double the leaf size as it continues to grow up the plank. This is my Monstera siltepecana, and I absolutely love this one, and this one has done exceptionally well on the plank. I did have to make a little prune right here on the smaller one as it wasn't attaching or latching onto the plank, so I'm going to have to watch out for that one with the new growth. But this cutting right here, with the exception of the plant tie at the bottom, it has done all the work by itself. You can see those little aerial root feet just latched on there, so it is stable, it's secure. I'm tapping it, it's not moving, but I can't wait for this one to size up into those larger leaves. And I'm glad that I have two stems on this one so that they can grow up together and hopefully get larger leaves than these tiny little puny ones. But this is such a cool plant. I just love the little frosted variegation on the leaves. Just got in here real close. These little white aerial roots are what you want to look for. These ones will latch on to the wood plank, or it'll have the best chance for success when they're very pliable like that. If you have older ones, like these kind of harder, crusty ones, I don't even know what's a good example. I'll have to find one on another plant, but if they are hard and crusty, then they will have a more difficult time latching onto. Here is my beautiful Syngonium frosted heart. This is just essentially a chia pence, I believe, with some variegation, some frosted variegation. This is another cool one. Again, it's not like your typical Syngonium where it has the very pointed lobes at the top. This is more of a rounded type leaf. It looks very similar to a philodendron. Same thing, I'm losing a couple lower leaves on this one, and it's got those big, thick, chunky roots, aerial roots on the back of this one as well. Got a puny little stem at the bottom as it's growing up. Looks like it's sizing up here as well. See if we can get a good shot. That's pretty cool. It looks like a little fan, so you can see all the new leaves coming out from each side. It just almost looks like, I don't know, like a little waterfall. Yeah, and here's some nice younger area roots on the stem there as well. So beautiful, beautiful plant if you can get your hands on a chia pence or a frosted heart. Really easy to care for, fairly fast growing, I guess. But I'm not too happy about losing these lower leaves, but that's what happens with older leaves on houseplants. As it pushes out new growth, it a lot of times throws the lower leaves, and it doesn't help that I am a chronic underwater. I let mine get way too dry. I just watered these a couple days ago. I'm feeling there's a little bit of moisture in there, so it might be another couple days before I have to give it some more water. This next one I'm going to be keeping a close eye on. This is the Epipremnum pinnatum yellow flame. Basically it has some yellow and green variegation, but doesn't look like there's any yellow variegation as of yet on these smaller leaves. I did take individual leaf cuttings. I bought one single strand of this yellow flame, and I cut the leaves into individual cuttings. I potted them up in some, I used my perlite prop box. I wanted to grow many different plants from those leaf cuttings, so I potted the smaller single leaf cuttings in the pot here, just because when you have a younger, smaller cutting, you have those young aerial roots, and they're more likely to latch onto the wood than if you had, say, a mature cutting. So that's why I placed these small little guys in here, hoping that they latch onto the plank with ease. So I'm hoping that the newest leaf right here has some yellow variegation. Otherwise, I just basically put a reverted yellow flame on the plank. But regardless, I still love these types of leaves, and I hope that this continues to grow up the plank. For the most part, it's been growing fairly well since potting it. You can see the original little portion of the stem right there. So it's got 2 little leaves on here. This one has 3, and it's got a nice little juicy, that's a pretty piece of perlite. I thought it was an area root. So I planted them directly against the board in hopes that those area roots will, while they're in the soil, like latch onto or adhere to the plank. Here is another Marble Queen pothos, which actually came from the same plant as my larger one that I have down there, that the first one that I showed. This one I did have growing upstairs for a little while. The variegation on this one compared to the other one is completely different. This is more of like a Snow Queen. It's like way more white, almost like speckled variegation. Very different, but this one has done really well on the plank. You can see, whoops, it's actually, well, looks like it may have come off. Got a little confused at some point right here, so there's a little bit of a gap, but the top area root has latched on again. This one I have not used any support ties at all, so very similar to the Epiprenum yellow flame. I just potted the cutting directly into the soil just against the board as a young cutting, and it trained itself. I didn't have to coax it with any sort of like plant tie or tape or anything like that. So this one's done really well. This newest leaf is since being downstairs here, so I'm wondering if it got a little confused about the change in environment. So yeah, but otherwise it looks like it's back on track. Gonna make sure this one doesn't wrap around at the back side of the plank. Might have to, well, it's kind of leaning off to the side here already, so gonna keep an eye on this one, but I can't get over the beautiful variegation on this one. I have a couple plants left to show you guys. I think the next one is going to be the moss plank, and I'll show you the update, but this one here is the Epiprenum panatum Baltic Blue. When I got this cutting, it was, I think, 2 just like shorter stems. I wasn't able to find any of the Baltic Blue here in my area in Saskatchewan here, so there was a Facebook seller that was selling a couple cuttings, which I took. So this one I did have to cut back because it was not like attaching to the plank, so I cut it back right here. And the leaves were getting smaller as well. So since cutting it at this point right here, you can see it has latched on all by itself to the plank there, and this is what I'm talking about, those white aerial roots. These are what are going to be latching on to the plank. So this single cutting right here, or this stem, has done really well. The leaves are starting to size up. It's getting a new leaf right there. And I do have another cutting that isn't doing the greatest. Actually, I have 2 other cuttings in there. So they're taking their time for sure. So I got a new leaf, a new little leaf coming in right there, and then this cutting I'm going to have to secure to the plank here as well before it gets a new leaf. So I'm just going to push this to the side. Where's the end of that cutting? I got a little bit of work to do with this one, but anyways, I love the way the newest leaf looks. Absolutely gorgeous. Same with this one here. It's just got a little bit of kind of light green in between the veins there. Just what an absolutely beautiful plant. Okay, the last one. This creation is the moss plank. I did staple and secure some moss to a wood plank. I have seen a couple other videos on this type of creation, so I thought I'd give it a try. I did perlite propagate this Mandula pothos. I potted it up in the soil here, and it's not looking good. It's looking very limp. It's not looking the greatest. So I may have to take this cutting out and replace it with something different, but the stem, or the main stem, it still looks really healthy. So I don't know, maybe I'm just being hopeful, but this leaf doesn't feel the greatest. So I'm wondering what happened to the roots. Let's take it out, because I'm curious to see what the roots are like. So transitioning a plant from one propagation medium to another can be a little bit difficult. I'm not too worried typically about perlite to soil. It's when you have a water propagated plant and then you pot it up in some soil. Sometimes those water roots will, if you let the soil get dry, they'll obviously dry up and the plant or the cutting will not survive. So I'm just lightly digging this one up. I'm curious to see what the roots are like. I'm just actually going to use my pencil just to loosen up the soil around it. I'm wondering if it did get maybe some root rot. I'm not too sure, but I'm just going to lightly pull up on the cutting. One dinky little root. Honestly, I don't have much hope for this. I don't know why it's not doing well. It doesn't look like it's like got root rot or anything like that. It's not producing any further roots. Like right now, it's probably been in here for at least a month. There should be a much larger root system on this plant, so I'm not too sure what's going on with this one. So I'm going to find something else to pot up in this. I'm going to go grab a jade satin scindapsus, I think, and pot it up on this. So I might have to try it again, but yeah, I'm not too sure what happened to this cutting. This was actually recommended by a viewer. Someone was asking me when I'm going to put one of my jade satin scindapsus cuttings on a plank, and I don't know why, but it never dawned on me to put one of these on. So these are very, very slow growing plants. So this has been established in this pot for probably, I'm guessing, at least a year and a half now, and it's getting some new growth. So I'm just gonna pick a cutting. I might do this one. The smaller the better. Actually, I'm just gonna take it out of the pot, just so I don't damage any of the roots while digging them up. So there, super easy. Okay, so I got a 1-leaf cutting, and get out of here. Okay, this one has a little bit of root rot on it because, again, in typical Jeff fashion, I underwater my houseplants. This piece right here, it's not terrible, but you can see the healthy portion of the root and then the end of the root which dried up. So I'm just gonna take those off. I underwater my plants all the time, so you can get root rot when you underwater your plants. So what happens when you have a lot of houseplants and not enough time to water them all. So I'm just going to stick these back in the pot, and I'll put it right back upstairs where I had them. Oh, there's some soil in there. Put that right there, and then I'm just going to add the soil around the edges. I can fix this up a little bit better. Just want to make sure all these roots are back in the soil because I can't let them get dry. Otherwise, I'm not going to have this plant anymore. Okay, just stuff that soil back in. I'm going to try and leave the plank in, as it's not a large cutting, so I'm just going to kind of dig just in the front here. Dig that down, and then I'll put it right back in place. Lots of orchid bark in here, so it's a nice airy mixture. Perfect. So I'm going to put it right there. I'm trying to look for the back side of the cutting, where the aerial roots will be in contact with the plank. I'm going to have the front of the leaf facing like that. The new growth point will be in direct contact with the plank, and I'm just going to put the soil back in, pushing down those roots. Just like that. So now I've swapped out the Mandula for my jade satin. And of course, like I said, I'm going to give both of these plants some water, help settle that soil, and then keep those roots nice and hydrated. So thank you to that viewer. I can't remember who you were, or when you sent it, or where you sent it, if it was on Instagram or YouTube, but thank you so much for reminding me that I needed to put my jade satin scindapsus on the moss, or on the plank, but I am using the moss plank for this one. Now I'm just going to use my pump action garden sprayer to water, to water the plants. So just settle the soil. You can wet the moss a little bit, just keep it from being hydrophobic. Spray the leaves. Same with this one, just give it a good thorough watering, clean the leaves off. Just going to turn this around a bit so I can see what I'm doing. I think this one is reverting because I want to show you this right here. It is getting a little bit of the, almost like an exotica type leaf, so a little bit of silver to the leaf there. So I'm not too sure which variety this jade satin comes from, but I'm guessing it's reverting with this leaf. So I'm going to have to keep an eye on that one. But yeah, that's kind of interesting. Give them a deep soaking so that it comes out the bottom of the drain hole. Just like that. Just waiting for it to come out the bottom. But I think that's going to be pretty much it for this video. If you have any comments or questions, please leave it down below in the comment section. Otherwise, thanks again for watching all my videos. I appreciate the support. There's really nothing else I have to do for this video. You've seen all my planks, so take care everyone. Bye.